All right, kicking off the main card, we got Ricky Simón going up against Brian Kelleher. Who's up on this one? Is it Guru?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And yeah, this is one of the better fights on the card, I would say. I mean, it was going to be on the prelims. They moved it up to the main card. I don't think it was supposed to be on the main card, but Ricky Simón and Brian Kelleher, they were supposed to fight, I think, 2 different times. And it's kind of funny because, like, the first time Ricky Simón pulled out and Brian Kelleher went in there and got the submission win. The second time, Brian Kelleher pulled out, Ricky Simón went in and got the submission win. So they set it up. I think Ricky Simón's fighting on like 2 or 3 weeks' notice. And yeah, I mean, I think it's basically finish or bust for Brian Kelleher, but he does have a good chance of a finish because on the feet, I mean, I do think he has the power advantage. I think people give Ricky like a lot of shit for his striking. I mean, he's a super hittable guy. And I mean, he was making Ray Borg look really good in the striking, like when they fought each other. But I do think that he has the faster hands and throws a lot more volume than Kelleher. I think that his leg kicks are going to maybe play dividends as well. So I think that on the feet, as long as Ricky Simón doesn't get hit with that, big bomb by Kelleher, he'll probably be able to outpace him. I don't necessarily think that the forward pressure or anything like that from Kelleher is going to tire out a guy like Ricky Simón. Simón probably has some of the best cardio in that division, so I don't think it's going to be like one of those cases like a Hunter Azure where you can get him tired and then finish him in the second or third rounds. But, we've obviously seen Brian Kelleher is real dangerous with that guillotine as well. So Ricky Simón has to be real careful, if he wants to go for takedowns. But I honestly think he could win this fight just keeping it on the feet, outstriking him. I do think that, Kelleher is obviously live for a finish. I mean, we've seen Ricky Simón clipped and submitted. We've seen him finished by guys like Uriah Faber. So his chin is a little suspect, and he has been dropped and submitted before. So Kelleher could do that, but I'm going to side with Ricky Simón. I just feel like he's going to be able to have more output. He's going to, push it down the stretch. I think it's going to be similar to the Cody Stamann fight, maybe not as dominant because I don't think that he's quite as good a boxer as Stamann is, but I just think Ricky Simón is going to be able to do enough and not get finished.
Absolutely. Locke, who you taking?
Yeah, Guru talked about how these guys were matched up a couple times in the past, right? And I find it interesting. The last time they were matched up, Ricky Simón was minus 185, and we had Kelleher at plus 160, plus 165. And the only thing that's changed is Ricky Simón went out there and beat up a guy that just got signed to the UFC on short notice and who was more than likely going to get smoked out by Ricky Simón. And that's exactly what happened. We saw Ricky Simón accrue over 7 minutes of control time in a 9-minute fight and then eventually finish this guy later. But I don't think that should have any indication of how this fight with Brian Kelleher is going to go. They're completely different fighters. Kelleher is obviously, has years of experience at this point in time, has been fighting the toughest dudes in the division as well. Whereas this Gaetano Perella guy just comes onto the scene and, people think that Ricky Simón dusting this guy is going to have an effect in how he's going to do against Kelleher. I just don't see it. So if you want to talk about line value and perspective here, maybe Kelleher does have a little bit of value considering you were getting him at plus 165 in the past. But I still do see this fight heavily in favor of Ricky Simón in terms of being able to mix it up as best as possible. And it's funny because we've seen Kelleher in his last couple of fights fight guys that are, the template or the prototype is the same. Like you got Hunter Azure, wrestler, you got Cody Stamann, wrestler. But out of all of those guys, I think Cody Stamann is the one with the best striking from a guy with a wrestling base. And then Ricky Simón has got to be a close second. But I think that he still does a good enough job of going out there and mixing up his game. I think he'll be able to land a couple takedowns on Kelleher here, but I think that Kelleher does a good enough job in terms of getting back to his feet. He has decent takedown defenses himself as well, too. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Ricky Simón kind of having to work a lot harder to get the takedowns if that's the approach that he wants to take here. But I do think that the cardio of Simón will hold up. I think the output of Simón will hold up for him as well. And also the Uriah Faber knockout. I think that's a bit of an anomaly, right? Like that's one of those freak moments where it's just like, okay, when do we ever see Uriah Faber knock anybody out? And in that amount of time, we've seen Ricky Simón take some shots from other guys, and he still keeps on ticking and still keeps on moving. I like to compare it to like Jimmy Rivera when he got knocked out by Marlon Moraes, right? Like Moraes, yeah, great. He does have knockout power, but we've seen Jimmy Rivera never finish since then, right? He got knocked down twice by Petr Yan, but can you really blame him? It's freaking Petr Yan, 135-pound champion. Whereas Ricky Simón here, we see him with the durability still. We see him still chugging, moving forward, even after getting hit. Now, Kelleher obviously has some power on his shots, and obviously we know he has that guillotine as well. But I do think that we see Simone pretty much nullify that entire game of Kelleher, put on a complete performance here, and go on to win a decision. So I think the way you want to approach this is, if you don't like that minus 250-ish on Simone, seek that decision prop. That's probably the best line that you're going to get on Simone here. But I do think he goes out there and handily wins this fight, probably 30-27 all around.
Absolutely. Cody Saftic, who you taking?
Yeah, I'm excited for this fight. It should be very exciting. Obviously, they tried to book it a few times, and they kept trying to book it at 135 pounds. So it's interesting that this one was, I guess, bumped up. Regardless, here's the thing with Ricky Simone. If this guy wants you to the ground, chances are he's going to get you to the ground at some point. And that style should play out really well against Brian Kelleher. And that I'm going to agree with Guru on this one over Locke's assessment. I don't think that Ricky Simone has a very good chin. I mean, everyone always wants to talk about the Faber knockout, but besides that, Anderson Dos Santos had him absolutely rocked bad in their Titan FC fight before submitting him. And then you look at every other fight that Ricky Simone's been in, he's getting chopped up by pretty much everybody. Ronnie Yahya boxed this guy up. Ray Borg boxed this guy up. Ray Borg is a 63-inch reach, by the way. Absolutely box him up. But what's that one thing in his back pocket? That wrestling. He can go out there and he can score takedowns over anybody. Now, people don't really list Ricky Simone when they're talking about top wrestlers in the division, but here's something interesting for you. So the last fight against Gaetano Perillo, whatever, that's a throwaway. 7 takedowns, but, you know, it's a Belgium striker. No big deal. Ray Borg, right? He took down Ray Borg 7 times. Ray Borg's only ever been taken down 1 time more than that, 8 times against Demetrius Johnson in a 5-rounder. Outside of that, the most he's ever given up in a fight was 4. So getting taken out 7 times by Ricky Simone, that's impressive, right? Simone against Rob Font, that's 3 fights ago now. 6 takedown attempts. No one has ever completed more than 2 against Rob Font in the UFC. Ricky Simone was 6, right? The 4 takedowns against Ronnie Yahya. Who would want to take down Ronnie Yahya, right? But yet he goes out there, he completes 4 takedowns on him, right? Merab Dvalishvili has had 7 fights in the UFC, okay? Ricky Simone is the only man to ever take down Merab Dvalishvili inside the UFC. He did so twice. So that's the kind of the difference, is that even though his striking is lackluster, his chin might be a little bit lackluster. His cardio is great. His wrestling's solid. His top control is not great, so he allows his opponents to get up a lot of the time. But you get back up, and he just rinse repeats on you. I think for his last camp, he switched over to Timo Yama in California. I really do think that you're starting to see some improvements in his hands, but that wrestling is his bread and butter. And when you look at Kelleher cracks pretty good. He's got that guillotine choke, but I don't see him submitting. I don't mean, it's certainly possible, but Ricky Simone doesn't really got much of a neck, you know what I'm saying? So pulling guard on a guillotine choke, like it's one of those flash in the pan moves. I'm not going to bet money on a guy based on one submission of many submissions. It's like, what else do you got for me? But Kelleher is like a go out on your shield type guy. And I think he's going to bring that pressure early. He's going to try to do something early. And if Ricky Simone just neutralizes him, grinds him, does what Cody Saftic was able to do, minus the good boxing, just score more takedowns, grind on this guy. Eventually Kelleher gets tired. Eventually Kelleher probably wilts a little bit. And hopefully at that point, Ricky Simone takes over. Now, again, Ricky Simone, for all the good things he does have, he's another one of these decision guys. Most of his wins, they're decisions. His best punch is not enough to knock you out. His best submission doesn't seem to land it in the UFC. It's a lot of these decision type victories. So with Kelleher, even though he's a kill or be killed type guy, he loves hitting those unders. It does scream more of that Cody Saftic fight where it's like you're able to largely neutralize him. And I think I'm going to go with Ricky Simone, and I'm going to try to improve a not so great price tag by chasing another decision prop.
Sounds good. I'm on Ricky Simone too. You know, I just feel like he's probably the better fighter, man. I'm high on Ricky Simone. I like this kid a lot. Do have to worry about the chin issues. And I tell you what, man, going up against a guy with the nickname Boom, who we've seen lay down the boom, I mean, it's a little bit risky. I mean, Kelleher's kind of live at all times, man. He catches you on the chin. He can put you out. We've seen this guy have some serious stopping power. You know, another thing that I think about too is, you know, Ricky Simone, if he's going to go out there, he's going to do Ricky Simone shit. He's going to be hitting those takedowns. Brian Kelleher's got a phenomenal guillotine, you know, probably, I'm not going to rate it the best in the UFC. I mean, we got Brian Ortega, we got Du Bronx, but man, it's up there, you know. When he snaps that thing off, he can snap it quick, and dudes tap fast. But like you said, Cody, Ricky Simone, not much of a neck there. Really good wrestler. I think he's going to be able to handle it. Outside of getting caught in a guillotine or just eating a bomb and getting knocked clean out, I got to go Ricky Simone. So Ricky Simone's the play for me. Another big old heavy favorite. What can we do? Maybe you chase the distance prop. I don't think it's too bad. But Ricky Simone's definitely the play for me.